My name is Hoitingh, and I will be doing a session today on the data loss prevention in Microsoft 365. But before we start, first off, a very big hand to the sponsors for this event. Without sponsors, volunteers, organizers, speakers, of course, but without all of these events like this, probably wouldn't be able to be run. So a big hand to everyone involved, including the sponsors. Also, if you would like to join the quiz, there's going to be a lot of very interesting prizes, and we do have a lot of very some easy, some not too easy questions for you. I submitted some questions myself, so please pay attention in this session, and you can join the quiz. So without further ado, let's start with the session. It's going to be on data loss prevention. So some takeaways or objectives for today. I'll be talking about Microsoft 365 data loss prevention. I'll be looking at some of the different ways to find information within Microsoft 365, because that's one of the biggest parts of data loss prevention. Also to look at policies and alerting, monitoring of those alerts, and I'll also be looking at some more advanced features like Endpoints, DLP, and Cloud App Security. So a lot of things to talk about today. So let's start, and let's start first at the beginning. Well, why do we need to look at data loss prevention? And to be very honest, if you look at the amount of information which we store, create, share on a multitude of platforms, it's expanding. It's stored, it's shared everywhere. If we want to, either within Microsoft 365, in Azure, or in the Google Workspace, in Salesforce, Dropbox, and although not every type of information would be considered sensitive, we need to understand there's a lot of sensitive information going around, and a mistake is easily made. Just sending an email with an attachment like an Excel file with social security numbers to the wrong person, for example. Having SharePoint open to sharing invitations, although the site itself contains personal identifiable information, medical information being shared by accident, for example, or because the information location or the location where the information is stored isn't secured properly. So there's a lot of reasons really to look at things like data loss prevention. Here in the Netherlands, I think it was like a week ago, we had a city council where, because of human error, a lot of information on the citizens became public because someone just made a mistake emailing information, and there were no data loss prevention activities or measures in place. So that's really why we need to look at this. Also, this is a somewhat older slide, 2018, but even at that rate, since 2013, more than 9 billion records have been lost or stolen. Stolen, that's a criminal activity, of course, but losing records because of human error or storing it in an unsafe location, that happens all the time. So we really need to take a look at ways to solve this. And one of the ways to solve this is of course Microsoft 365 data loss prevention. So let's take a little sidestep of what is data loss. Well, it can be intentional or non-intentional loss of data from your enterprise. I say intentional or unintentional because, well, like I said, most of the time it's simply human error, either by your admins or by your end users, and they share or overshare information, or the information is not encrypted and, well, is being shared with someone, and that person overshares it or reshares it. The other one is, well, the intentional loss of data, and that might be insider risk. For example, people moving away from the company, or a contractor with too much access, and information can be lost by allowing those people to exfiltrate information from your company. So I already mentioned some examples. One of the biggest examples, of course, is just forwarding of emails. Just forward all your emails because, well, in the session before this one, there was talk about MFA, for example, and I see a lot of organizations where after things like MFA are enabled, people start just forwarding emails to their personal addresses because, well, then they won't have to suffer, as they say it, the MFA. So that's data loss in itself. But also storing it on personal cloud environments because that's more easy, or just taking home your information on a USB drive, not encrypted, for example, and just losing the USB drive in the train while commuting back to home. That's all sort of well, examples of data loss. So what does Microsoft 365 provide for this? Well, we have several options, and let's take a look at some of them. First off, if you look at Microsoft 365, we have protection against sharing activities, for example, within SharePoint, Teams, well, basically all components within Office 365. Right now, we even go beyond that. So we have endpoint protection, DLP, and even on-premises DLP. And I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. The other one is, if you look at how Microsoft 365 uses DLP, we have templates. And again, in a couple of minutes, I'll show you how you can use such a template to really get up to steam with data loss prevention, just using such a template to create a really easy data loss prevention policy. Those templates can be enhanced, or you can just choose your own configuration. And if you look at what's in a DLP policy, which we are going to do in a couple of minutes, you'll see things like blocking the access, notifications you can use to your end users, warnings, or just blocking access to, I already said that, blocking access to either the email or the file or the conversation in Teams, etc. So templates built in, well, DLP policies basically, but you can also go beyond that. Well, what's not part of the deal? Encrypting. So DLP is not things like Microsoft Information Protection. That's not entirely true, because some of those DLP actions will allow you to set an encryption. For example, within Exchange Online, if a DLP rule is activated, it can be set to automatically encrypt the email instead of just blocking the email. But the encryption is not handled by the DLP engine itself. So that's the Exchange or Microsoft Information Protection or Outlook message encryption. Those are the encrypting parts of that equation. DLP itself isn't really a part of insider risk, basically, the insider risk functions, but it does integrate with insider risk. So there was a session on insider risk a couple of hours ago, and if you have DLP rules set to generate high alert warnings, then those high alert warnings will become part of the insider risk policy as well. So those are integrated, but it's not really part of insider risk management itself. Okay, well, let's take a look. First of all, I will show you how this works from a user's perspective. So what does a user see? So let me just go to my environment here over here. And here you'll see, first of all, a Microsoft Teams environment. Before I show you, well, you can already see some of the activities within Teams already. Please note that what I'm about to show you here in Teams, that is part of the E5 compliance license for Microsoft 365. All other functions I'm going to show you, like SharePoint and Exchange, those are part of the standard E3 functionality. Teams data loss prevention is part of either E5 compliance or E5 security. So please take that into account. What you see over here, I have a channel. I have created, and we'll go into that in a couple of minutes. I have created a policy which checks on medical terms and medical information. That's a built-in template from Microsoft 365. And what I have over here, well, I just picked some of those terms which are readily available on the internet, and I just copy paste them here in a Teams message. And as you can see over here, although it's in Dutch, it says the message has been blocked. And if I go over here in my activity, you'll see I've been added a long time already. And some of those messages have been blocked. So let me just show you how that works. For example, if I'll just copy it again, I'll just try it again. Let me see if the DLP still works. So I'll go to a new message. I'll say, hi there, check this out. I'll have to inform you before I send this. This is a Teams environment which contains external users. So this is very important because my policy acts on information being shared with external users. So this is a Teams environment which has been shared with an external. And let me just try to send it again and just wait a couple of seconds, and there it goes. So now it's being blocked. So that is like near real-time data loss prevention from Teams. If I were to try to share a file, for example, within Teams, then I have to go look at SharePoint, because SharePoint is the location where files are stored. In my SharePoint environment, I can set the same policy to disallow sharing with externals, and then the file won't be available to that end user again, as well. So let me just show you this again. This was Teams. Now let's go to SharePoint, for example. Over here I have my SharePoint site. I have several I have one document library and a DLP folder within that, and as you might notice already, I have several documents over here which have a little sign associated with them. Not all of them, but some of them have the little sign, and as you can see already, contains sensitive information. One of the nice things about Microsoft 365 right now is that it doesn't only look at Office documents. Over here you see a zip file which contains some information. Let me, no preview available. That's a pity. It contains some of the files you see over here, and it's also being marked by data loss prevention. So if we go over here, and I'll just try to zoom out and see if I can get the policy tip open. Oh, yep, there it is. And over here it states it contains financial information, so not as much the medical information you saw already. It's being shared outside of my organization, and the item which was found was a credit card number. So somewhere in this zip file there is a document, either a PDF or Word or whatever, Excel perhaps, which, well, basically says, okay, it's a credit card number. What you're seeing also is, well, I have some options as an end user, and this is something I can configure within the policy. So I can, in my policy for credit card information, financial information, I have set it to override. So I can just say I want to override, please allow this. And this is going to be logged, of course, in the audit log. So I can submit that, and now the policy has been overwritten. So, and let me just try to refresh the page, and now you see that indeed the little icon has been removed and the sharing action has continued. So that's an override function. Okay, last thing to do here is just to look at Exchange. Well, I already created a little email containing some information. In my case, again, the medical information, ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes. As a user, I get prompted for this. The message has been blocked. I tried to send something to my Proton Mail account, which is an external user, of course, and I get some feedback on the blocking action. So that's very in a nutshell how the functionality works from an Exchange perspective. There's also things like policy tips, and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. So these are basically the three functions from an end user. In my case, I was very strict. I just blocked all the messages, and in some cases, I provide an override button. So let me just show you, or let's just continue with the slides, and then I'll show you how that works from an admin perspective. So yeah, there we go. Microsoft 365. So if we look at DLP, there's a couple of components for DLP within Microsoft 365. We have the policies, of course, and there's ways to find your sensitive information, because most of the time your data loss prevention policies will be based around that sensitive information. That's not entirely always the case, so I will have some examples for when you won't be able to or won't be using those sensitive information types, for example, but most of the time it's bound around some form of sensitive information. So we have the policies, we have the sensitive information which can be found, and search. One of the key things you need to take into account, at least for things like documents within SharePoint, for example, or OneDrive for Business, DLP uses Microsoft 365 Search to really surface all that sensitive information and to be able to create a DLP policy around that. So at the end of the presentation, I will give some additional thoughts on this, because there is one caveat to using Search for DLP. So please take that into account. I'll get back to that at the end of the session. Okay, first off, data classification, because, again, if we're looking at data loss prevention, we really need to look at the data. And there's a lot of ways to really find the data. In my little demo just a couple of minutes ago, I showed you things like medical information, ICD-9, ICD-10, that's built into Microsoft 365. You also saw the credit card in an email. So those are really the built-in types you can use within Microsoft 365. Those are called sensitive information types, and I'll get into those in a couple of minutes. We'll look at those sensitive information types and what they do. One of the other components right now within Microsoft 365, either within the E3 or most of the time that's part of the E5 compliance, are things like trainable classifiers and exact data match. Trainable classifiers are basically using machine learning to get an understanding of your sensitive information, and based on that model, which Microsoft 365 compiles, the information is detected and can be used within a data loss prevention policy. Exact data match is somewhat different. That's, as the name suggests, if you have, like, for example, a medical patient database, or the database with patient information, you can set an exact data match to the records in that database to information within Microsoft 365. Like a patient number, a patient name, and some other information, and you can really have like the name suggests, an exact data match. That's really complex. That's why I won't be going into that during this session. But if you really do have that requirement, then that's the way to go. There's also another one, which is still part of data loss prevention, but isn't available in any GUI or, well, you won't be able to see it basically. That's the document fingerprinting. I think that's going to be really, well, deprecated. I'm not sure, but with the trainable classifiers being available, I think probably the document fingerprinting won't be too relevant anymore. But the way it works is if you have like a document template you want to use for DLP to really find that information, you can create a document fingerprint using PowerShell, upload it to Microsoft 365, and then based on that fingerprint, it will start creating matches. So that's, like I said, that's only available using PowerShell. You won't find it in any GUI right now. Okay, well, let's take a look. First off, I'll just show you what sensitive information types are. Over here, you already see well, the out-of-the-box sensitive information types. Well, I think instead of just rehashing what's on the slide, I'll just show you in a couple of minutes. And the same goes for those trainable classifiers. So let me just switch to my demo environment again, and I'll just show you where you can find this. So over here, again, here is my demo environment. And if I go to data classification, yeah, you'll see the same screen I already showed you. Just a quick peek at those trainable classifiers. Trainable classifiers, how it works is that if you have specific examples of your sensitive information, which might be well, like you see already here, there's a lot of built-in trainable classifiers as well by Microsoft. But if you have like an invoice or some other form, you can upload it to the system, and then the system will use machine learning to really extract the information on that piece of sensitive information, and then you can use it within data loss prevention and even Microsoft information protection. So that's really just a peek, because it's a bit more complicated than that, and I wanted to show you as well. But the other thing is the sensitive information types, and that's really very important, because that's one of the key things for a data loss prevention policy, to look for sensitive information. And your sensitive information types, well, you get a lot of them from Microsoft themselves. Some of them have been added quite recently. For example, this one over here, all physical addresses, all medical terms and conditions. So these are quite new, and basically what these do, and there's information on docs.microsoft.com explaining every one of these, what kind of algorithm is behind it, what's part of it, etc. So let me see if I go for, just take this one for example, and you see, well, it doesn't really explain that much, and that's because the built-in sensitive information types cannot be well, edited. That's proprietary. That's Microsoft. You can, over here, you can copy the sensitive information type. So if you have a sensitive information type which is built in from Microsoft, but you really want to use it, but enhance it or just change it, you can copy a sensitive information type and use it as your own. What you can also do is test the sensitive information type, which is, well, very handy functionality. You can create your sensitive information type, upload a document like a PDF or a Word document, and then see if the sensitive information type really detects that information. So that's really cool stuff. Over here you see some information on the sensitive information type, and I'll just show you that when I create a new one. And let the system do its magic right now. There it is. Okay, so again, very important to look at those sensitive information types. So let me just create one. Valid description, sorry. And now I have to create a pattern. So the pattern contains some important components. You see a primary element, supporting elements, and even some additional checks. So the primary element, that's the part where the system is going to look for first. For example, if you have the sensitive information type credit card, then the number of a credit card, the format of a credit card, which is a regex function, is going to be that primary element. And if I want to add one, as you can see over here, I can have things like a keyword list. I can have, well, that regular expression. That's again the primary thing the system is going to look for. Over here I have things like a character proximity, which basically states where in the content is my primary element and my supporting element. Let's say I have a text credit card number followed directly by the credit card number itself. That will fall within those 300 characters over here. So that's going to be a hit. But let's say I have the word credit card number and then like 500 characters below that, then I have the number. That won't fall within that 300 character limit. So then it won't be a hit by the system. So this is really important to take into account. And well, I already mentioned it right now. Any supporting elements. So let's say I have that credit card number, that's a regex value. Then I can have things like credit card number abbreviated, etc., etc. So those are the supporting elements which make up that sensitive information type. If I want to have some additional checks, I can build them in here as well. So I can exclude some values, etc., etc. So this is really very comprehensive. I won't finish this right now because I think you probably get the gist of it right now. Over here there's one very important one, that's the confidence level. There's 3 confidence levels within the system right now, low, medium and high. And the higher you get, well, the less false positives you'll get, but you also, the system will be very, very thorough in checking if the conditions are met for this sensitive information type. So, well, take that into account. You also see the confidence level being displayed at the data loss prevention policy. Okay, so sensitive information type, really, really important when looking at data loss prevention. But as this session is on data loss prevention, let's get back on track with that, and let's look at the next important part, and that's data loss prevention policies. And in essence, these aren't that difficult. You have basically some questions. What are the locations where that information might reside? What is considered sensitive? Those are those sensitive information types, for example. What actions do need to be checked? For example, sharing activity or mailing activity, or, well, you name it. What kind of accuracy do you need? And then what are the required actions? And those are, for example, blocking access to the information, like you already saw within SharePoint, for example, or blocking a message, which you saw in Teams, for example, or which is kind of new right now, just blocking communications between several people within an organization using chat, for example. You can also use data loss prevention for that. Creating a policy is really very easy if you go for the templates. Those are the out-of-the-box ones. That's kind of like next, finish, and I'll just show you. The other one is more advanced, and I'll show you that one as well, and so you get a feel of what you can customize as well. So let's take a look at the policies, but before we do, just one other piece of information which is very relevant. That's I already talked about finding that sensitive information, but I already mentioned at the start of the session that you can also look at other conditions for your DLP policy. And I want to show you that based on the three main components of Office 365 right now, so that Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. And especially if you look at Exchange, there's a lot of DLP conditions which can be used with a sensitive information type or just without. And for Exchange admins, it is kind of like all those mail rules you can set up. DLP also covers a lot of those conditions. And this slide will be shared with you, so don't try to zoom in or what. Well, if you want to, you can, of course. But things like the sender's recipient, the sender's domain, a specific AD attribute, content which matches, content which can't be scanned by the antivirus environments, etc. Those are all conditions where a DLP policy can also take action. So that's very important. For SharePoint Online and OneDrive, that's more information focused. If specific content is shared, or for a specific document property, which is part of, for example, the metadata within SharePoint, then that's also a possibility to activate a DLP policy. And within Teams. Well, Teams was not too long ago just focused on content sharing, like I showed you in the demo, trying to share something within a conversation. Right now, and I think it's out of preview already, is really focusing on sender and recipient. So if you don't want a specific recipient to be available for chat, for example, then you can have a DLP policy set on that specific user, for example. We're going to look at those DLP policies. Please beware that if you combine locations, you will notice that the amount of conditions are limited. So if you just go for all the locations which are part of a specific DLP policy, you might notice that specific conditions won't be available. So the way to go there is, if you have those specific requirements for specific actions or conditions, just create your own DLP policy specifically for that condition. So let's take a look, and we'll be looking at two things: just creating a DLP policy from scratch using those templates, but also going into the more advanced side of things. So over here, let me just go to data loss prevention. Over here, you'll see my my policies. As you can see, I already have several of them. The policy you saw being activated within Teams is the one over here, which I wasn't able to translate it in English, but over here it says medical terms, basically. And you see I have a lot of other ones. What you might notice is that I have a status. I have several policies which are turned on. I have several which are turned off, and there's even a setting between those two settings, which is turn it on, but only in test mode. And that's really a good function to use when you start using DLP. Just create your policies, run it in test mode, because alerts and warnings will be generated, but the end users won't be affected yet. So that's really a very nice feature to use. And another thing, you'll see an order over here. And that's important as well, because the DLP policies will be, when you create them, the policy will be at the top. But the order is important because those policies will be handled within that order. So please be careful with that. Also, if you have specific Exchange DLP rules already, or mail rules, and those conflict with with these rules you see over here, then the Exchange rules will take precedent. So please be aware of that as well. So let's just create one. I'll just create one from scratch. What you'll see over here, I can start with a template, for example, which is what I'm going to do right now, and it will create, it will show me in a couple of seconds, I hope, the template based on either privacy information, financial, there they are, financial information, health, and custom. In my case, for example, let's go for privacy, and over here you'll see a lot of well, templates, and these templates basically just are bring together a lot of privacy specific sensitive information types. So let's say I'll just go for example, well, GDPR. I'll just go for the advanced ones, and you'll see that I have a lot of information which will be part of this DLP. If I go for this one, you'll see this is the basic one. They, like I said, they have added several sensitive information types to DLP. So if I go for this one, I get things like credit card number, driver's license, etc. If I go for this one, I even have the things like physical addresses. And full names. Here in the Netherlands, we still have a what we call a burgerservice number, which is our identification number, which isn't the same as the EU. So I really have to add that one as well if I want to. But for now, I'm okay with this. So I'll just say next. I'll just keep the name as like this. And right now, it's going to create my DLP rules. So if I'm happy with the things I'm seeing in a couple of seconds, then I can just finish it, and I'll just turn it on in test mode, and then the environment will start working with the DLP rule, and let it just finish. Basically, what it does, here we go. First off, like I said, the locations. So, and let me just say, well. I just want to check, for example, I don't want to check teams, those and those. Those three over here. Please be patient. I'll go into that in a couple of minutes. But let me just say I want to check all mail addresses. I want to check all the sites for that information and OneDrive. I won't be going into Teams chat right now. These are the things I want to protect. So let go. Oh, protecting content isn't supported. Okay, well. Kind of weird that I can select it then, but okay, let me just go for these ones. Okay, well, it says okay, and now I can say, okay, what kind of information do you want to protect? Right now it says that the information or the rule name already exists. So let me just go back, because I just want to show you. I'll just go for the for this demo, I have to go back and I'll just check a different one. Yep. Because what you just saw was the more advanced bit, and I want to save that for in a couple of minutes. So basically, I just wanted to use the basic ones. So let me just go for this. Again, these ones I'll just skip right now. Again. Right. Okay. The difference between what you saw with the GDPR and this one is that with GDPR I got this only this option because the name for the rule already existed, but I just wanted to show you first this one. This is the based on the template. So it says, well, okay, we're going to check for this. Are you okay with that? Yep, I'm okay with that. Okay, what do you want to do? Well, in my case, I want to detect if it's shared outside of my organization, because that's my main problem right now. So I'm happy with this, and right now I have some protection actions, and these are the actions I can configure within data loss prevention. First of all, I can I can show tips to my users. I can inform them the things you already saw within Outlook, for example, or the message you got sorry, in Teams. That's over here. I can even have a threshold. So let's say I don't want a threshold. I just want to wanted to check for every information. Then I just deselect this one. In my case, I just want this one, and let's say I don't want an incident report because it's not that much of a big deal. I don't want any alerts, for example, but I do want to restrict the access. So in my case, if a document is found from this policy and it's being shared with someone outside of my organization, then the sharing action will be blocked. So that's what I want to do. Let me set this one to, well, at least, okay, 10 is okay. Okay, yeah, just block it outside of my organization. I don't want an override. What you saw within SharePoint in my demo a couple of minutes ago, you saw that I could overwrite the zip file and then it was sent. But let's say, no, I don't want to let people override that, and just removing the checkbox well, removes the right for the people to override the policy. So, okay, I'm happy with this. And now, okay, and now we get to the activation part. Like I said, there's basically three components which you see over here. I can just turn it on right away, but no, let me just test it out first. So, okay, I can review my settings, which is over here. One of the neat things right now, which is kind of new, is that Microsoft says, well, why not update your locations, because there's more locations than just SharePoint and OneDrive. Well, in my case, no, I'm happy with this, so I'm just going to submit this one. After submitting this one, it will create the policy. It will start, using the search index to really find that kind of information. Well, because it uses the search index, most of that information is already available. So it's going to check on things like sharing actions, etc., and then it's going to take into it's going to be in effect. So make sure you take. That's the so-called demo gods, of course. Okay, there's something wrong with my name. Okay, no problem. I'll just I'll show you the more advanced stuff right now. So just now I just created one from using a template, but let's say if I want to go for a custom type, and I'll just go for this one. I'll just give it a name. Please do be aware what we're going to do right now. The more advanced the DLP policy, you're going to see a lot of things like alerts, names, policy rules, etc. So it's really a more complex configuration. So let's go for this one. Let's say again just SharePoint and OneDrive. I'll just I'm happy with those. So, and now I can say I want to create my own custom DLP rule. Okay, and now over here I have my rules. A DLP policy can have more rules. You can set a rule for a specific sensitive information type, another rule for a specific action, etc., etc. Within those rules, you can even set if when the rule is activated, if all the other rules below that should be activated as well, or if the policy just should stop when that first rule has been activated, for example. So let's normally if you would go for the template-based rules, you get two kind of rules. You get a low impact rule and a high impact rule, and that's based on the number of sensitive information which is found. For example, a low amount of alerts would probably be between 1 and 10, for example. So someone is trying to email a credit card number one time or two times. Well, that's low intensity. But if someone tries to mail, like let's say 100 credit card numbers, then that's a high intensity. So then you can really play with that intensity within those rules. So let me just create one, and now we get into the more advanced stuff. So let's see. I'll just create a rule which I already also call. Let me say low, and let's have this medical information, for example. I can also include a description, but for now I'll just skip this one. And what do you see within this template? Well, first off, the conditions. So what content or conditions need to apply. When will this alert be or this rule be activated? Are there any exceptions? For example, let's say we want to find some information that doesn't belong outside of our organization using mail, and we want to have as an exception when we mail something to a trusted partner, for example, or within our organization. Then we have specific exceptions. I can have actions, so blocking the access, for example, or notifying, well, not notifying, but blocking access or encrypting email, and we'll see what that looks like in a couple of minutes. I can have user notifications, notifying users, becoming aware that they're doing something which isn't allowed because of that DLP rule, for example. I can have the user either override the action, like you saw in SharePoint, for example, and here at the bottom we have things for our security personnel, like creating incident reporting, severity options, etc. And over here you have the option, if there's a match for this rule, stop processing. So this is really if this one is really important, then you can stop processing altogether. If not, then all the other rules will be handled as well. Okay, so let me just add a condition. Let's say content contains, for example, and over here you see I already get more parts. So I can add, for example, a sensitive information type, for example. So let me just say, well, in my case, this is medical. So let me have all medical terms and conditions. So now the system will be looking for any information which contains all medical terms and conditions. Over here you have the confidence level, and I already told you that that's basically 3 levels, and I really want to be sure that I have the least amount of false positives. So I say high confidence right now. As this is a low rule, I'll just set this one, the instance counts to, for example, let me just go for, go to 10, for example. And so if someone is trying to email something which contains 11 medical terms, then this rule won't be affected because this one goes to 1 to 10, for example. Okay, medical terms, if I want to add something else, I can. Like, for example, I have a sensitivity label which is called medical privacy information, so let me add this one as well. So now it's going to check for this, and it's going to check for this sensitive information label, sensitivity label. So this is basically where the system is going to look for. And well, I don't want to have any exceptions, but I do want to add an action. So in my case, I can restrict the access. If you look at things like Exchange, which isn't part of this rule right now, but if you want to look at Exchange, you get a lot of other actions as well. Encrypting the email, blocking the sender, removing the attachment, even modifying the header of the email, etc. In my case, I only have SharePoint and OneDrive, so I can restrict the access, for example. And I'll just do that, and I'll block, well, basically just block everyone. What this does is that if this DLP rule is activated and any information is shared outside of the organization, which, by the way, I still have to add as a condition, so I have to do that, then it will be blocked by everyone. Only the author of the document or the person who shared this document will be able to access the document, and of course the administrator of the SharePoint site, for example. So that's a very, very stringent action, but I'm happy with this one. But I still have an action, and this is over here, because the first action I added over here, the condition was based on the information, but I still have to say if it's shared outside of my organization. So now I'm happy. I have what kind of information the rule will activate on, where it's being shared, and what to do when it's being shared. I'll just set the, let me just say I do want an incident report, set it to medium, so it will be popping up in my DLP reporting. Okay, I'll just save this one and yep. Oh, it's validating over here. So yep, there it is. And over here you see I have my my rules. I created one rule and it already created two subset of rules. So let me just create this one, and this is, for example, this is going to be the high, and instead of 1 to 10, I'll just go 10 to any, and that's the high severity. So let's say that this is the high severity. I still keep the blocking actions, but right now I'm just going to for the severity to too high. I want to send an email to my admins. I even want to notify the site administrator, because right now that's really a high severity incident. So as you can see, I have a lot more options to really inform people that there's something going on. I'll just save it. So now I have a low, I have a high, I don't have a medium, but that's no problem. And again, I can test it out, and I'll just submit that. So as you can see, those advanced DLP rules really have a lot more options if you want to have that requirement. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing the wrong screen. Oh, no, that's okay. So those are the policies, but please be aware that even if you create a policy from a template, you can afterwards you can always edit that policy, and when editing the policy you get into that advanced configuration. So even if you go for the template based, you can always go to that advanced editing of the policy. Okay, some thoughts on dashboards, and then I'm really trying to keep it into the time slot. So I really want to show you the device-based endpoint as well. So reporting and alerts, in the policy you already saw that I can notify my end users, but there's also the admin side of things. And this is just one of them of the examples you have over here. You have within the reporting part of Office 365, you have DLP reporting, like incidents and policy matches. And as you can see over here, I have several matches on the medical privacy information label I use. There's I have that medical terms policy which was activated. So over here I can really have a lot of information. If we go beyond that, then we can have the alerts from data loss prevention itself, and that's like I said earlier, most of the things are E3 licensing. Some of the functions you're seeing right now is E5 licensing, which is advanced auditing, advanced alerting, and all things which is basically advanced regarding data loss prevention. For example, if I go for this one, I see that there's a SharePoint site which has a PDF inside of it, and there's sensitive information, and I can even have information on what's being happening on that document. So that's really very enhanced. Okay, so to close out my session today, some advanced options or enhanced options. First of all, we have the endpoint DLP. I already showed you this one in the policy. You saw that there was a thing called endpoints. Endpoint DLP really scans information on the Windows 10 desktop. And if it finds any of that information and there is a policy assigned to that, it will check if that's allowed or not. And I'll just show you in a couple of minutes. There's a lot of requirements for this to work. First of all, the Windows 10 device itself needs to be Azure AD joined or hybrid joined. Otherwise, it won't work. And that basically means that this isn't really a bring your own device kind of thing. So please be aware of that. You also need the E5 compliance license for this to work. It's not just something you can turn on and it will start to work. You really need additional licensing for this, and your devices need to be onboarded. If you already use Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, then the onboarding is the same procedure, so then the device is already onboarded. If not, then there's a subset of that functionality available within the Compliance Center to help you onboard your machines to use Endpoint DLP. So that's really a very cool function right now. Another one is on-premises DLP, and that uses the AIP scanner. So that's the Azure Information Protection Scanner functionality. It can scan SharePoint on-premises and network shares, not just to see if there's sensitive information, because AIP can then label or classify and label that information, but also if there's overexposed information. Let's say there's privacy medical information there, and that's on a file share which is shared within the entire organization, for example, or even beyond that, then DLP for on-premises can notify you, but it can even reset those permissions to a more acceptable level. So those are two really very great enhancements to DLP, going beyond just Microsoft 365. Just to give you an example, this shows you how Endpoint DLP basically, in a very, very big nutshell or small nutshell, works from a device. So someone is trying to copy some specific sensitive information, copying information is not allowed, and then you get the pop-up from data loss prevention. So that's the Endpoint DLP in action. Another one is Cloud App Security, more enhanced. Cloud App Security allows you to scan non-Microsoft Cloud environments. There's a lot of different kinds of licensing for which are part of that solution. But basically what it does, it can check, for example, within Salesforce, Dropbox, or other connected environments if there's specific information, and to set data loss actions on those. So again, this is the E5 license you really require to use it, to use this. Okay, looking at the time, I'm going to skip this one because I do want to have to give you some things to take into account when you're going to look at the data loss prevention. A lot of the functions I showed you today are just built in, are E3 licensing, or even below that as well. But there are some caveats, so please be aware of it. So one of them is the policy tips. It really depends on the version of Outlook you're using if you want to show some policy tips, for example. Sometimes they don't even work. So even if you do configure them within the Compliance Center to show a policy tip, don't be surprised that if you're using a specific version of Outlook, that they won't show up. So there's a lot of information on that for Microsoft. The same goes for sensitivity labels. These are limited to Office file types only. So if you're using those within, and that's just within Exchange. So if you want to scan on sensitivity labels being sent, or documents with a specific sensitivity label being sent by Outlook, for example, those are limited to Office files, and they're not available as a policy tip. So please be aware of that. There is an option for that within Microsoft Information Protection, though. And if you want to, I can inform you on that. That's using the advanced PowerShell commandlets for Outlook and sensitivity labels, but they're not part of DLP. So if you try to use sensitivity labels and DLP policies and a policy tip, don't be surprised that won't work, unfortunately. And the other one, if you don't want to wait, like I said already, a lot of DLP functionality is based on search, which means that although search and the indexing is quite fast, there might become a time then when information is added to, for example, SharePoint Online, and the search engine hasn't indexed that already, that the DLP rules will fail. Well, if you don't want that, you can basically set all files you add to your SharePoint environment as basically untrusted and block external sharing. And then after the DLP rules and the search have finished, then sharing is possible. So if you have very sensitive files, you can use this commandlet to really look, well, basically close that gap. Okay. Well, some final thoughts? I'll just let you read this, and when I share the slides. If you want more information, there's a lot of preview programs right now, especially around endpoint DLP, on-premises DLP, etc. MIP News is also a very good Twitter handle to follow, because that's also on Microsoft Information Protection, but also on information governance, etc. Well, with that, it's already 5 o'clock at your end, 11 at my end, and I just want to share. Please join the quiz. There's a couple of questions on DLP in there as well, hopefully you'll win a prize. And with that, I want to say a big thank you for attending my session. If you have any more questions on DLP, don't hesitate to contact me. These are my contact details. And like I said again, I will share this slide deck. So just keep my handle handy, and you'll see it arriving. So with that, I want to thank you.